Welcome to the Woodpreneur podcast, the number one podcast for the business and marketing side of the lumber, woodworking, hardwood flooring, and sawmill industry. I'm your host, Steve from Acres of Timber. Each week, we feature various wood business owners and entrepreneurs from around the globe. We share their stories, paths, insights so that you can network, learn, and grow your own wood business. Thank you so much for listening. Now enjoy the episode. The Woodpreneur podcast is proudly sponsored by Acres CRM. Acres CRM is the wood industry's only customer relationship management software dedicated to helping you automate your sales and marketing so that you can focus on serving your customers and growing your business. You can visit acresoftimber.com to learn more and to schedule a demo. Once again, that's acresoftimber.com. Hey, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Woodpreneur podcast. This is your host, Steve, and today's guests, we have two guests, which is very exciting. We have Ben Christensen who's the CEO and co-founder of Cambium Carbon, and we have Paul Timmons, who's the president of Baltimore Fallen Lumber Company and the director of wood products at Cambium Carbon. How you guys doing today?
Doing well. Thanks so much for having us on.
Yeah, excited to have you on.
Doing great.
So I'm excited because you all have a mission, and it's not to sell wood products. Why don't you just give a little bit of history behind Cambium Carbon, Ben, and I'd love to hear Paul's story as well. But yeah, tell us how it got started, and then we'll kick it off to Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, really, really great to be here. You know, at Cambium Carbon, we really think about how we can create a solution that solves meaningful problems and addresses climate change at scale. So my background really is coming at addressing the climate crisis. And I also happen to grow up in the wood shop. So my dad's a carpenter and always grew up around wood and never really thought I could connect those two dots. But while at grad school at the Yale School of Forestry, really learned about this, huge problem of urban wood waste, and was recognizing that there's an opportunity to create, aggregation and connection across a national movement that, has done a lot of amazing work over the last, 15, 20 years and really, really grown. And I'll take it to the next level and really tie that into addressing climate change. And so for us, we're a public benefit company. We focus on really, really helping and focusing on helping the communities that we work with, really working with our milling partners, or the different supply partners we work with across the country, and then really reinvesting in the forests, that we are seeing that salvage wood come from. So we have a 15% tree planting commitment. We work with lots of amazing local planting organizations. And anytime we sell a table or wood product or flooring, we put that directly back into community planting as well. So that's what we're all about.
Awesome. So you guys you're helping to divert all of the urban wood waste into usable products and then turning them and replanting as well, right? So
exactly.
That's awesome. We'll dive in more into that. And Paul, tell us a little bit about your background in the work that you've been doing in Baltimore.
Yeah. So thanks for having us on. It's much appreciated. I believe it or not, I started a company called OE Custom about 21 years ago for the purpose of doing general construction, and worked my way through the ranks of that and found myself near the 08-09 collapse, wanting to deviate from construction and move more towards my hobby of woodworking. During that time, there was a lot to be learned, a lot to figure out. I was buying a lot of material from the traditional supply chains, and I had a couple of tree buddies that were throwing trees away that were the same species of what I was making products out of. And curiosity got the best of me. And I grabbed two cherry logs to start it all off, went on Craigslist, found sawyers, met with sawyers, and started my journey of taking local waste trees and turning them into high-end products. So since about 2010, we've been working pretty steady in trying to figure out how to build products out of this supply chain and also how to develop the supply chain. And just before COVID hit, OE Custom, which was the original name of the company before it became Baltimore Fallen Lumber, we made a pledge that we were no longer going to use the industry's material. We were only going to focus on our own supply chain and using the material that's coming out of Baltimore and Baltimore City. At which point we were then met up with Cambium, and we have now joined forces, and we're out to really accomplish a big goal. And we have over a decade of experience just in this space alone, and we're excited to share it with everybody out there and see if we can really make a big difference.
What was that like, Paul, when you were first starting and making that pledge and that commitment? At that point, were you still doing construction, or was it just all furniture?
So in 2010, I had a couple of projects that were still kind of dragging out, but for the most part, it was moving to woodworking solely. At about 2012 is when we bought our first sawmill and really started the curiosity path about how to use this material in a bigger and better way and how to just make it work. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think from because I think there's like a little bit of a mental shift from, going from traditional sources to making the intentional. Like how did you orient your business to the point where you could make that a more conscious decision? And I'm sure there were benefits that you reaped as a result of it, but like, how did you make that, and how did you align your business in order to get to that point?
So as we were building objects from the traditional supply chains, I recognized that the only way for our products to stand out above and beyond everyone else wasn't just the quality and the time or the finish. I felt like there was another way to make this out of local material. And we set out on a path to learn as much as we could to make local material be as good, if not better, than the traditional supply chains. So there was a solid 5 to 6 years where we were jumping back and forth between traditional material and utilizing local material. And that was a really good process for us because we were able to see what the industry does and does not want, and how we can make those products that our customers do and do not want, and how we can pair all of that. So it took a lot of time. There wasn't one moment where we just pulled the Band-Aid off and it was like, here we go. It was, let's start with one species and let's understand that species and how can we bring it to market and what do people like and don't like about it, and really do A/B testing with every species to figure out how we can make this material work in this space. And there are a lot of small nuanced differences that took years to really figure out and understand, because we were A, developing a market, and B, developing the supply chain along the way. So there was just a lot of constant pivots and shifts to really make it work. But at the end of the day, you get a product that's a whole lot more unique than anything else that's out there. It tells an incredible story that most products cannot tell. And one of the first things I used to tell people from the beginning was that the product that you have, or the product that you're buying, has only traveled 50 miles from where it grew as a tree for 100 years all the way into your home. And there's not many products in anybody's daily life that has a footprint that's that small.
So I think one of the big things that, is a big part of that, right? This is what Paul's highlighting, and I think this is what you're getting at as well, Steve, is there's different stages. Every business that works at this, comes from a different angle and has a different sort of step in the journey, from, folks who are just getting into it and are cutting their first few slabs, to really large, high volume shops that are pulling out, massive commercial jobs. And I think one of the big things we think about at Cambium is how can we provide value at every single stage? Whether we're helping somebody who's just getting on, start to track their inventory and get a few slabs online so that they can tell their story more effectively, or helping a mid-size shop, access, better drying techniques, and really taking some of the, the learning that Paul has done. There's this really deep knowledge in this expertise here, and helping to really grow shops across the country. And then, how do we think about connecting really large, folks who are starting to get bigger into these national buyers, and how can we really do that at every step of the supply chain? And that's what we're really going after.
Cool. One more question for you, Paul, is what do you produce, and give me a size of scope of your company at this point where you're like, I only want to do this because I could truly appreciate the local aspect, because I feel like the customer, the end consumer, truly cares about that story, right? Like for them it's valuable, right? But there's the tension with the company and then potentially other suppliers, or maybe even within your operations, your processes, because it's like you're dealing with material which it's not as finished, so you got to put in a little bit more work, right? And so like give me a sense of like before you linked up with Cambium, like what was the size and scope of your company?
Yeah, so I dove into the woodworking space for profit, to not just the hobby side, but for profit through countertops, believe it or not. So I recognized a transition of materials that are being used in kitchens and bathrooms. And I recognized that the uniqueness that people were looking for in granite and stone through my construction years would bleed over into the wood world and the utilization of wood within kitchens. So in the beginning, it was really a countertop business. We made large flat rectangles. I still hold a Maryland home improvement license, so I'm still able to go work in people's homes and even build homes for that matter. So it was a really good bridge between the two worlds, because I understood the subcontractor side of the residential construction world. As time went on, it was obvious to us that there were other objects that made a lot of sense to be made of solid wood. Not everything should be made out of solid wood. So tables were the next best option for us, just because it's a very similar rectangle that sits on top of a base instead of on cabinets. And we really started
you cut it in half and it becomes a side table or a coffee table.
Right, exactly. You cut it into 4 pieces and you got 4 coffee tables. So there was clearly, we recognize that, but the way in which we approach things at BFL is that we don't make an offering to the public until we have it figured out and until we know exactly what we're doing. So it wasn't as easy as saying, oh, let's put legs underneath this and call it a day. We really wanted to figure out how we could bring solid wood into the table market in a very big way. And a lot of the customers really linked up to the story that we're able to pass along through these pieces. And that's really what motivates a lot of these people to buy furniture that's local, because they know where it's coming from. They can meet the people that are making it, and they're a part of the process instead of just looking at a website or looking at a catalog, choosing it, and then waiting 40 weeks to get it. So as we started to bring the table market about, we started recognizing other uses for wood and how we could use the local fallen material to solve those problems. So over the past decade and change, we've been experimenting and using solid wood on all sorts of levels that go as far back as hundreds of years ago, and how farmers would use certain species for certain projects and certain uses. And we've really been diving down that road for some time now to really understand how can we remove the plastics and the unnecessary materials that we use in our daily lives with wood. It's here, it's present, it tells a story, and we're throwing it away. And I really want to change that. So that was really a lot of my motivation.
It lasts
in
forever,
like how to bring
too.
this.
It's like the durability. There's almost like this. I mean, if you look at it like a what's that? What's the guy's name? Nicholas Taleb. You know the book? Oh my God, it'll come to me. Anyway, I'll come back to it. Ben, so tell me, and that was awesome, Paul. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
And tell me, like, because I'm curious, because I remember hearing about you guys, like, I don't know, a couple years ago from my old client, Jennifer Alger, from Far West, and she was like, the Yale guys, the Yale forestry people, and then so how did you form into a company from just an idea? So it's we're a bunch of grad school students that were that co-founders. Is that what happened? So tell the story about that.
Yeah. Yes and no. I grew up in a tiny town in New Mexico. I went to undergrad at Cal Poly. I never thought I would go to a place like Yale. So like, oh, Yale grad students, I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
I get concerned about that. But during my time there, I was working on a lot of different aspects of forestry, particularly around the carbon. Thinking about federal policy there.
Sequestration. Yeah.
Sequestration. How do we do that more effectively? How do we really enable that? How do we think about creating business solutions that enable that? And while there, I met one of our co-founders, and our big thing is we really spent the first year and a half of our business really listening. And so we thought initially we were really going to go after this challenge from the municipal side, and we still work with a lot of different cities. And what we learned in that is cities have a huge opportunity to really drive this at scale. It also is slow, as we know, working with cities. So slow. And in that, we also, we were meeting lots and lots of, local urban wood product shops. And we were recognizing, whoa, there's a big technology gap here. There's an opportunity to really, provide more solutions there. And then sort of to the point we were just talking about is there's an opportunity to serve as a platform organization that can help these local shops continue to grow, can help them do more of what they love, building those objects, really expanding their businesses, and then connecting into bigger markets. And so, we've benefited from so much help along the way. Getting Paul's and John and BFL's expertise on board is massive for us to be able to really, really have, some folks who understand wood in a way that is just truly phenomenal. We also have that on our technology team, folks who were really early at, Wayfair and have built really effective large scale technology are now working and focused on how do we build our technology to, really serve local product folks. Same thing on sales, same thing on all of that side. So for me, my story with it is I found some people who are a lot smarter than I and who knew a lot more about these different parts of the industry and really brought them together. And our whole goal is to really, really serve the industry and come at it from a perspective of helping to elevate.
Yeah, talk to me about the challenge of being able to do, because you're dealing with this very old, stodgy market industry. Like, how have you? And I kind of get the sense. So, like, I dabble on the fringes, right? But like, to make the kind of change that you all want to make, you either got to renegade it or you have to like go in and rub elbows, which, assuming why you're living in DC is like I understand like how the challenge of the undertaking that you're going after. I mean, because there's like FSC, there's lobbying, there's all these sorts of stuff. And I think for the listeners, I think what the reason why I have these guys on is because they're really aiming to make the wood products that you produce much more available to people worldwide. So when, for both of you guys, when I started this whole journey, because, I did a lot of listening, I did a lot of research, and, I've, 20 years of marketing and entrepreneurship background, but my father-in-law had a sawmill. That's how I came in. So I was like, he had a sawmill. I married into 2 generations of tree farmers and woodworkers and sawmills. And he was obsessed. And I was like, why is he obsessed? And I realized as I did more research, the number one problem was that nobody knew that they existed. That's what everybody would say. Nobody knows that we exist. And the story that Paul said about like, oh, your tree came from 50 miles away. The story that I love to tell, that I love to say is like, oh, my kids sleep on a bed made from ash trees planted by their grandfather and milled. Their great-grandfather planted it 40 years ago, and it was milled by their grandfather and made into a bed by their grandfather and grandmother. I was like, and to be able to transport that story of like, hey, the tree that's from, Central Park, or the tree that's in, DC or Baltimore, like the tree that you grew up can turn into furniture. Like for the listeners, like, Paul and Ben are like trying to make that like more well-known so that you have a market that you can sell your wood products to at scale. So they're solving a very big problem. So I think that's, for you, that's the context to the question is like, it's a hard thing, right? Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like what makes it worth it? And what's your approach to actually doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll share our first couple thoughts and then, Paul, jump in here. I think a few things. One is we've noticed that the market has operated, and what we've seen sort of within urban wood is one that operates sort of from a position of scarcity, where everybody is trying to compete and we're trying to get through this. And what we really want to transform that to is a market of abundance, where coming at this from a perspective of there is so much wood waste out there, and if you're doing something great, then it's great for everybody. But we all have to do it well, and we have to, come together. So our whole goal, and what we found, we've definitely found a good bit of the old guard, some hesitancy, thinking about how do we bring new technology. So Trace, our software platform, which really allows that tracking, it helps do that storytelling. It does inventory management. It's an awesome way for local woodworkers, sawyers, millers, everybody sort of along this.
Yeah, a bunch of my clients use it. So
awesome. Yeah. And it's really exciting. We've seen a lot of growing adoption there, and we're really launching a number of new features. We're launching a marketplace feature where we're connecting all of these dots, really soon, which is super exciting. But with that, you definitely get a number of folks who are more hesitant. And what we believe is we're just going to continue to really build a product that works. And my believer is, if we can provide value, whether that's bringing in large orders to local shops, whether that's building technology that actually helps and actually works day to day, then we are going to win in the marketplace. And it's going to take some time, and not everybody is going to, turn over and do it. But for me, the thing that gets me motivated and gets me excited is figuring out these really hard problems, and in particular, bringing in resources to a space that is so often overlooked. How can we bring in different resources, different perspectives, and really connect dots in a different way? So that's how I think about it and how I stay energized.
That's cool. And Paul, I mean, you've kind of been an evangelist for, a long time, right? And in this space for a long time. What I guess, I don't want to say what motivates you, but like, what is that sort of, what keeps the flame going, and then why did you essentially either sell, merge with Cambium to create something bigger? Like, obviously, give me some insight into that.
Well, I've had the wood bug ever since I was a kid. I was an Eagle Scout. I spent most of my childhood in the woods. I know the trees well. And as a hobby, it was, you open up a board and you can't stop but stare at the grain as if it's art. It's just impossible for me not to look at. As I got into the space even further, and I realized what it feels like to open a log up on a sawmill, it reminded me of being 5 years old on Christmas morning. It's like you have no clue what's inside there, but you're eager to do it. So for me, it's the love of the hunt, the chase, educating, teaching. I love seeing people's minds open up over, the things that this knowledge has been around a long time, but it's slowly fading away from our culture. I like the idea that wood just affects everybody in so many ways, but no one really understands it. And I think spreading the word on that is critical. And if you really think about it, it's like without wood, we wouldn't have anything. You couldn't form concrete. You couldn't produce steel. You can't breathe oxygen. It's such a necessary thing. So the idea that I can be a part of something much larger than just what I was doing here in Baltimore was a really, really neat opportunity. And it felt like the right time to really just jump on this and nail it, because I'd been in the space for so long and saw so little in terms of people really doing it right. And I kind of felt like the only way it's going to get done right is if we go out, we really preach about it, we really tell people what can be done to make it work. Because it's not just about how good you can mill or how good you can dry, or it's all of it. And the final product that you're sitting around at your house or that you use on a day-to-day basis, you have an intimate relationship with it, but you don't even realize it. And when I was a kid, I'd sit around a 5-foot white Formica kitchen table at my parents' house. That ugly kitchen table stands out in my brain. And I wish it wasn't white Formica, because, and so my kids sit around a 5-foot English walnut kitchen table. And it's amazing. Every day they see a different thing within the wood. They talk about it with their friends. They do their homework on it. We eat dinner. We do everything around this table, and I'm excited for them to have that relationship that they'll remember later in their life and really be able to connect with. I think it's a big deal.
Awesome. That's so cool. What do you think your sort of, I had two questions. One is like, what would you like what can the sort of the listener do here to sort of, be part of this larger thing that you all are building?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start on that and Paul jump in. The big thing for us is we're really trying to get as many folks on the Trace platform as possible. So TRAECE is how it's spelled. It's actually Danish for tree. And it also obviously means to trace. So really being able to track and tell that story is what that's about. So that helps folks get wood products online, helps get the inventory, and it helps really get connected with us. And that goes into the second function that we're really working on, which is working with a lot of these national brands and, telling them the story, helping to really clearly quantify the carbon metrics and how this fits within their sustainability and their purchasing goals, and then bringing those orders to local woodworkers and local producers. And so for us, we would love to connect with anyone and everyone, both about, folks who are interested in learning more about Trace. It's free to get on. You can learn about it. It's a really easy way to start to connect with us. And then also more broadly, we would love to understand what you do, what you're building, what you can source, and how we can help, sell more of that wood. And we've got an amazing sales team. We're really going deep with our marketing team right now. So we're going to launch a number of different components, and we can help tell that story, more and more, and really connect into those national buyers. So that's what we're really looking for.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm like, to what Ben's saying, 100%. I'm like, reach out to Cambium. I'm like, we've got all the knowledge from A to Z. We understand how to take a log all the way to a final product in a residential or a commercial project. We're here to help. We're here to explain, and we're here to work together. CambiumCarbon.com. Check it out.
Easy.
Awesome. So any sort of last bit of parting advice for the Woodpreneur community?
Yeah, I would say two things. One is, I think that we all do this as people, right? We're all in our own worlds. We're all, working hard at whatever is in front of us. But I think there's this amazing thing that we should recognize within the space of wood and, within urban wood in particular, that we have an opportunity to be really a transformative industry, and one that is sort of painting the future of what circular economies can look like. And, all of this little work, all of those pieces, all those, extra hours you put in to make your business work and then to make this bigger movement work really matters. So I just think leaning into that, staying really grateful for that. And then the second thing, and this is what we are always going to do with anybody who reaches out, is really listening and seeing how we can connect. Because I think the more we can come together collectively as an industry and produce really high quality products with high volume and, really transform how cities, manage their trees, it's going to be huge. And the more that we can do that together rather than, being competitive in this space is I think going to be the biggest win.
Awesome.
Yeah. From my perspective on that, and I'm definitely just not coming around to this, but more recently coming around to this, as we've gone out, we've met with people and we've talked with a lot of groups around the country. There's one thing that I see in common, and I want to pass this along to all the listeners, is that everyone in this space is stressed, frustrated, and overwhelmed because it's a lot of work. There's a lot going into all of this. I was the same way. And I'm here to say there's people out there that think and do just like you. We're here to talk. We're here to figure it out. Reset your mentality and recognize that you're doing the right thing, and just put your focus into continuing to do the right thing, because it does pan out in your favor. And if you're interested in working together, don't hesitate reaching out, because that's the attitude that we bring, and we're here to just knock it out of the park. So please reset your mind, focus on what's good here, and there's a team of people out there that are really interested in helping. I think it's important for everyone to hear.
I love that.
I think you bring up a super interesting point. I feel like I spend a lot of time talking to people about mindset, and there's a reason why my company's my marketing agency is called Acres of Timber, because when you see timber, it's like there's money, right? And so and nature is abundant, which and nature provides. And even if you would to take, a percentage of the salvage a percentage of the urban forest, there's still billions and billions of acres of urban forest out there. And I like to also say is that as long as IKEA, Pier 1, and West Elm are still selling billions of dollars in furniture, there's a market for your wood products. You know what I mean? And so I like the idea of resetting the mindset a lot, because because they do, the wood industry, woodpreneurs work super hard and oftentimes by themselves. So they're milling, they're stacking, they're stickering all by themselves. And, being able to, plug in, which is why I started masterminds and networking groups and DM groups, just to have people feel like they're not by themselves. Because there's nothing more lonely in an entrepreneurial journey than feeling like you're alone. It's the quickest way to give up, right? And so by knowing that you can plug into something bigger and you're working towards something that's even more big, that's bigger than yourselves, really, it's we're really on the ground level of something massive, and there's more than enough money on the table for everybody to eat, right? So that's cool. Paul, Ben, thank you so much for being on the podcast. CambiumCarbon.com. We'll put the link in the show notes, and I'm excited to have you on. Thank you guys for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for listening to the Woodpreneur podcast, the #1 podcast for the business and marketing side of the lumber, woodworking, hardwood flooring, and sawmill industry. If you like what you heard, please give us a 5-star rating and review. You can also tap into our community by visiting woodpreneurlife.com. Once again, that's woodpreneurlife.com.